Evening, everyone. It is April 3rd, 2020. I am your host, Rick Richards, and this is the COVID Cast 27. I'm in kind of a low energy mood tonight. It's been a long week, not just for me, but for all of us, right? But I am going to do my best to amp things up, make this both entertaining and interesting and informative for you, okay? So bear with me. We will get things started. We'll get things rolling. Let's crush a monster first. Pop. Some pills to go with it. These are not just any pills. These are Advanced Nootropic from Athletic Alliance, proud sponsor of the program. And I can say I do honestly use these every day. I use them for meetings. I use them for presentations. I use them anytime I have to be mentally sharp and fast. What it's like taking this kind of product is, let's say you have an equalizer, right? And let's say everything is kind of set at mid-range. It's like taking the sharpness and pushing sharpness from 5 to 10 up 10 out of 10. Pushing focus from 5 to 10 to 10 out of 10, right? Like, so everything, it just snaps into place, right? That's what it's like. Oh, you can get the Advanced Nootropic right across North America at any GNC that is open. Because of the present situation, I'd say that's about 50% of them. Mall locations are not open. But strip mall type stores and standalones or those sort of things, they are open. And they'll even do curbside delivery. You can buy these from gnc.com or svn.com as well, or athleticalliance.net. And what's more, we are selling the HydroPro, hydrolyzed whey protein. This is very good for digestion, very good for colostrum, which helps your immune system, protease, lactase, antioxidants, and hydrolyzed. If you know anything about protein, hydrolyzed is the most digestible form of protein. So what kind of show do we have tonight? Well, we're going to do our update. We're going to do our shout outs first, then we're going to do our update, and then our deep dive tonight is going to be in the impending state of martial law. Yes, you heard it from me. I've hinted at some things I've seen that are leading up to this, but we'll get out to this in depth. First, shout outs. Shout out to Rick and Sandy and Rhonda and Julia, of course, Julia, Dwayne and Charlene, my boy Jixer, Tammy, Tanya, Kim, Ivan from Sector B49, Vanessa, Kushi, Diana, Tim the bot, and Terry McLean. Tim the bot, he gets insulted by a lot of people, but hey, I'm going to shout him out anyways. Special friend of the show, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. And my old gray-haired daddy. I know he doesn't watch, but he's with me in spirit. And he's healthy. He's out of the casinos, and he's staying healthy. So, what are we going to do first? Let's take a trip. Let's take a virtual trip around the world, shall we? And we will start off looking at the COVID situation. Globally, there are 1,095,904 coronavirus cases, resulting in 58,814 deaths. The death rate was at 5% of the cases, the confirmed cases, and it seems to be inching up a little bit. Seems to be a little bit over 5%. Now that's not 5% of all people that get the coronavirus die. What that means is people that are sick enough that they would get tested, people that are tested, 5% of them, it's been fatal. And those would be the sickest cases, right? So some disturbing information out of France. We see France has now become the new hotbed. The death rate in France is very high. So you know what? The death rate in France is very high. The death rate in the United States, of course, is very high. And we'll get back to this again. I mean, that's 1,000 people, 1,100 for France. France is actually surprisingly high, because I don't even know if Italy at its peak was ever as high as 1,100. So that's kind of, well, not kind of, it's definitely bad news for France. But what this probably means is they are in the eye of the storm. Today is April 3rd. 1,100 goes into 6,500 6 times, just under 6 times. So in 6 days, we should expect this to be 13,000. So if by April 9th, this number is in fact 13,000, that means they're essentially probably at the peak of the epidemic. And if it's less than that, then they've probably passed the peak and the fatalities are slowing down a little bit. Same with the US. Yeah, same with the US. Spain has the second most fatalities after Italy. Their number has fallen. I think it was a little over 900 recently. Italy's death rate has fallen off. Italy looks like they've passed through the worst of this. UK still fairly high. Germany, Netherlands, as I've said, that's when I was watching, because they didn't get their first case until the end of February. So it's really only been about 5 weeks for them, and they're at about 10% now. So this should double in a week, but it does look like it's kind of slowing down a little bit. We can see in Canada, our death rate is accelerating. Obviously bad news, and I'll get into Canada a little bit more. Any other countries that stand out? Where's Sweden? Sweden, where you at? Sweden, where you at? Sweden. Sweden is a smaller country. I think the population of Sweden's about 10 million, 11 million maybe. So they're about a third the size of Canada. You can see they only have half the cases of Canada, confirmed cases. However, they have more deaths, and it's been much more lethal in Sweden. But strangely, they haven't had more cases. And one of the interesting things about Sweden, let's take a little bit of a look in Sweden, see if there's any information that we should examine in more detail. Daily new cases, you can see this is just keeps escalating. Active cases, total deaths had an early plateau and then an acceleration. And the plateau was around there. And March 27th, and I think with Sweden, they've kind of taken a sort of a hands-off approach, and they're not really doing all of the quarantining and stuff that you're seeing here. They're kind of just letting things run its course. And I think people, though, are just essentially quarantining themselves to some degree. Not really much there. Just kind of says what's going on. Let's take a look in our own neck of the woods. The hell is this? What the hell is this? Coronavirus. Here we go. All right, Canadian cases. What's happening here? So, 12,421 cases, active cases. 2,000 people are recovered now, which is obviously good news. British Columbia, 1,100 cases. Quebec and Ontario are really kind of moving forward with new cases. Quebec now has a total of 6,000. Ontario had 462 new cases. The total amount of deaths in Ontario is 67, 35 in BC, and 13 in Alberta, 61 in Quebec, and the other provinces are more or less negligible. I mean, there's been a couple, but that's not bad for a month. Newfoundland and Labrador, 200 cases, only one person's died. Prince Edward Island looks okay. So yeah, no, in the entire Atlantic, I mean, there's only been one person that's died. It's all really come down to three provinces: BC, Ontario, Quebec, and maybe Alberta. You could include in there as well. I guess you could, sure. So Ontario, 67 cases. So one of the things I've observed here is I've been watching. I try to watch a lot of the press conferences every day, and we're seeing a subtle shift. Justin Trudeau really kind of seems out of his depth, to be honest. Now, I know he has a team behind him, and I know he's, he really struggles when he has to do anything beyond comforting and reassuring people. Whenever you ask him for action and analysis and anything that involves a little more depth, he does not veer off his script. And I guess, he's been burned in the past in his first term as prime minister. He did some things and he was made a laughing stock of. Okay. So I think he's a little bit reticent. But one thing I have noticed, here is Ontario's Premier Doug Ford.
A conference.
Okay, so just to set this up, somebody was asking, there's been a situation, right? There's been a situation with the United States with Donald Trump and a company called 3M. 3M makes face masks, right? Face masks that you would use in hospitals and for first responders. 3M makes them. And they are due to ship a bunch of those to Canada. And the United States, I mean, you could say Trump, but I mean, really, it's the entire United States. It's their government apparatus. They've invoked, what is it? I think it's it's some sort of emergency manufacturing edict, and all of that stuff is staying in the United States. And there's a lot of people in Canada that are upset about this. Justin was very upset. He felt it was very unfair. But I don't know what else you would expect the United States to do. Like, their situation is much worse than ours. And, do you want them just to let people die? This stuff's being manufactured in their country. Do you want them just to ship it all out? Like, that would be very, very irresponsible, right? And we can see some of the cracks in this whole globalism setup that we have, right? Where, we outsource everything. Everything's got to be cheaper. There's, we're always worshiping the GDP. GDP's got to go up. Costs got to go down. Efficiencies. But now you can see in a situation like this, we're really fucked, right? I mean, for a simple thing like not being able to manufacture masks. And I'm a big believer that any company that sells in a market should produce in a market. So if you want to sell your products in Canada, you should be producing them in Canada, whenever that's possible, right? If you produce it somewhere else and just expect to sell it into a country, then you're really just taking from that country. You're not giving anything back. And I know this from a manufacturing end. Create jobs in that country. Manufacture something in that country before you sell it. Unless it's just completely impossible with infrastructure. But that's besides the point. So this is a bit of a tiff, let's say, that's come up now, right? And there's going to be a lot more. We're going to find out we're not all one loving family. We're going to find out. Expect nationalism to really bubble up to the surface. I mean, you remember Donald Trump was saying America first. That doesn't look so stupid now on his part, does it? Right? Anyways, so there's a bit of a tiff, right? And one thing I've noticed as this crisis has gone on, it seems to me that Doug Ford is becoming the de facto leader of the country. And I want you to listen to this.
All with the premiers yesterday, and then also a conference call with the premiers and the president.
So Doug Ford had a meeting with all the premiers of the different provinces, and he had a with the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as well, and they were discussing the situation.
And I told all the premiers, along with the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, never again in the history of Canada should we ever be beholden to companies around the world or countries around the world for the safety and well-being of the people of Canada. We have the technology, we have the ingenuity, we have the engineering might, the manufacturing might. There's nothing we can't build right here in Ontario. And I also mentioned, as we get these companies ramped up and we get through this, we can't be going over to other sources because we're going to save a nickel. Because we might be small in population compared to other countries, but we're giants when it comes to technology, manufacturing, ingenuity, engineering. As I always say, we can build anything. And as long as I'm Premier, I will never, ever let this happen again to the people of our province or our country. I've had great conversations with all the manufacturers right now.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, Doug Ford is, you know, good times. When you're in good times, there's an old saying. My old granddaddy, his name was Stonewall Brown. And he used to say to me, in a strong enough wind, even turkeys can fly. What does that mean? Well, it means that in good times, things look great that might not necessarily be great. People that lack certain abilities may rise up because they can afford to in good times. But in other times, when things are more difficult, we see different things and our criteria changes, right? So that's, I don't know, it's just something I've observed. I've observed over the last week that, and I'm not a fan of Doug Ford. I'm not a conservative or a liberal for that matter, or any political party. I just solely identify as independent. And I try to be as unbiased as I can. And my observation is that Trudeau is diminishing because he just is getting repetitive and he seems lost whenever people ask him more complex questions. He seems determined to stay on script. Whereas over the last week, Doug Ford seems to be elevating and assuming an unofficial mantle as a leader of the country. Just an observation. So let's get into the main subject of the evening. The main subject. What kind of things are we going to see next? And they're already starting to surface. So, okay. How many people had mortgages come out this weekend? I did. How many people had rent due this weekend? How many people had utilities? How many people are getting notifications from other places where you may have, whatever, cell phone or whatever bills? The bills aren't stopping, are they? The mortgages aren't stopping. The utility companies, maybe they have some kind of song and dance you can go through. The banks, they're not doing much, really, are they? Maybe they'll defer something, but all these guys are getting their money. We're not all in this together. They'd love to portray that we're all in this together, but that's really not the case. Some of us are more in it than others, right? Some of us will do just fine. Others are going to get fucked. And that's the way things are shaping up now already. And the powers that be, they know this, right? They're preparing for it. And take a look at a couple things that I've seen. Okay. So we are seeing tanks now rolling through Los Angeles on trains. And, the mayor of Los Angeles said, hey, don't be alarmed. This is footage from March 24th, right? So even then they were kind of preparing for this, right? March 24th, tanks rolling through on trains into Los Angeles. Hey, geez, what's that for? You think you're going to get attacked by another country? No, citizen, that's for you, okay? Plus, I was in Vancouver. Now take a look at this. This is Vancouver. This is Robson and Thurlow. And if you are at all familiar with the city of Vancouver, Robson and Thurlow would be the commercial heart of the city, probably the commercial heart of Western Canada. Everything west of Toronto, for example, this would be the absolute commercial hotbed. And look at it. Look what we see, right? Look what we see. Does this look like this is temporary? Does this look like, oh, a couple weeks and things are going back to normal? No, this looks like a couple years and maybe things will go back to normal. 6 months, I don't know. People are, they obviously, you can see the Vancouver police have, they've set up cameras everywhere. They're watching us, right? And this is not a good sign, okay? This is something that we might want to be concerned with. So let's see what else is going on this front here. Sorry, Doug Ford, time to say goodbye. Coronavirus, troops sent to New York containment zone. And this was as early as March 11th. March 11th, they were already sending in the troops. Like, I mean, what was there, 5 deaths, 10 deaths or something in New York at that time? Maybe not even that, but already the National Guard. And they're there to deliver food to individuals that are isolated. Wow, that sure sounds nice, doesn't it? Although you could use volunteers for that, though, right? You could pay people. I'm sure there's a lot of people out of work that would do that. But no, looks like the National Guard is who they want. Yeah, at this time, New York just had 36 confirmed cases of the virus. Twice as many in New Rochelle. And so the National Guard has been mobilized there. Rhode Island National Guard searches house to house for New Yorkers fleeing the Wuhan virus. This was from March 29th. I'm not sure why Red State calls it the Wuhan virus. I don't know, maybe. So it's okay, it came from Wuhan, but I mean, so there we go. Rhode Island, police began stopping cars with New York plates Friday. On Saturday, the National Guard will help them conduct house-to-house searches to find people who have traveled from New York and demand 14 days of self-quarantine. New York is the current epicenter of the outbreak of the Wuhan virus. So you see, we go from helping to deliver food to searching houses to ensure quarantine. And this little gem from Global News. I mean, this stuff comes out and, the way you have to watch with news is they report on a lot of stuff, but certain things get escalated and circulated, right? So let's grab the headline here. 85% of Canadian troops ordered into isolation to prepare for COVID-19 operations. Prepare for operations. Nearly 60,000 of Canada's 68,000 troops are now in isolation in advance of COVID-19 operations, Canada's top soldier says. Many of them have been ordered to do so to be ready to deploy across Canada to assist civil authorities to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, said General John Vance in an interview Thursday with Global News. Others are on alert for critical operations, such as NORAD mission to defend North America with fighter jets. The vast majority of troops, about 85%, are not at their usual place of work, General Vance said. Their orders are to stay home and stay healthy and be ready. Vance likened what was happening to the military now to how armies responded when under artillery attack. You disperse the force, the chief of the defense said. That fits with what we are doing about COVID-19. We are taking extreme precautions. So there you go. So, I mean, does this not seem somewhat extreme? This seems a little extreme. Shops are being boarded up. Troops are being prepared, even in Canada. Troops are being mobilized in the United States. And I mean, I could probably go through a few more other countries and find more of this stuff, but I think that's pretty indicative right there. So, what do I think we can expect? Well, that same Doug Ford came out earlier today, and they said they expect lockdown measures to continue for about 3 more months. So all of April, all of May, all of June. So, I mean, again, I don't know why he also expects about 80,000 cases by the end of April and 4,000 fatalities in Ontario by the end of April. So we'll see if that is in fact the case. We'll be watching to see if that's going on. But it's interesting how things are often done in increments, though, right? So nobody said, what is it, 3 weeks ago now? Nobody said, we're going into a lockdown for the foreseeable future. No, it was 2 weeks, right? Everything was more or less centered around 2 weeks. And then the 2 weeks starts dragging on, and then it's really just about, well, we're going to flatten the curve. We need to flatten the curve and get out ahead of this. And okay, that's going on. And now we hear every politician really saying, we'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. So does that mean you're going to potentially imprison the entire country, right? How many deaths are acceptable and how many are unacceptable? Don't say no death is acceptable, because that's impossible to control, right? And we keep hearing these vague sorts of threats, right? Like, how long you stay in quarantine depends on you. And of course, Justin Trudeau, the ex-school teacher, takes that school teacher approach. Like, these punitive measures are going to be in place until you all behave in a way that is satisfactory to us, which we know is impossible to control. It's impossible to ensure, right? So what do I expect to happen? Well, I expect a tightening up. I don't expect a loosening up. I expect a tightening of these lockdown measures. And that's exactly what we're going to see. So construction industry, looks like you're next on the hit list, guys. Looks like you're getting the old shutdown notice within a day or two. What will it be after that? Could be takeout restaurants. Could be probably limiting access at banks. They don't want you in banks. Remember that. They want banking. They want that all done online because they don't want to have to pay tellers. So maybe, and again, we're going to see limited hours, right? Why do we keep seeing limited hours? You know, if you're concerned about social distancing, shouldn't you expand the hours? You know, if you got 10,000 people that need to use a grocery store and you're open 24 hours, then what's that? That's 400 an hour? No, 10. Yeah, that's about 400 an hour that would go through the store. Whereas if you're only open for 10 hours, that would be 1,000 an hour. So which sounds like a more effective way to ensure social distancing? Longer spaced out hours, shorter condensed hours. But I don't know. We seem to be getting the opposite. We seem to be getting a constant clampdown. And we seem to be getting a movable goalpost that keeps pushing out. People just give us dates. They don't, there is no indication of what needs to happen, right? And you're hearing a term called modeling a lot now, modeling. And all that is, that's just a fancy term for predictions, right? It's like saying we're modeling the weather. No, you're predicting the weather, right? So these are different predictions. These are worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, predicted scenarios, all these sorts of things, right? And we've already heard BC has been pretty vague. You know, we're at, I think, 35 deaths in BC. I find that really unlikely to be up to 2,000 by the end of the month. But let's do some simple math. Today is the 3rd. Let's say our death rate is such that it doubles every 6 days, right? So we're at 35 now. Let's do Ontario's. Ontario's much worse hit. They're at 61 now. So in 6 days, so April 9th, they would be at 122. April 15th, they would be at 244. April 21st, they would be at 488. April 27th, they would be at 976. And then that's pretty much the end of the month, right? Maybe one more 6-day period after that, and they would be up to 2,000. That's if it keeps at its current pace. Maybe it could accelerate, maybe it could decelerate. But what they should be doing is saying, this is where we want to see this leveling off, and this is where we want to see it falling down. And we hope to get there by April. If we do, everything will go back to normal. But I will tell you this now, friends, normal isn't coming anytime soon. Normal is not coming anytime soon. The pressure is going to be ratcheted up. Now, I hate to leave on an unpleasant note. And you know what? I'm going to watch all this weekend. I'm going to watch for positive news, and hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I am wrong, but I think we are going into a more restrictive, more severe lockdown measure. And you know, if they're going to do that shit, talk to the banks and say, look, man, don't bill anybody, right? But those guys got to get their money. They're fucking gangsters about it, aren't they? So we'll see. Sorry, that's a bit of a black pill cast tonight. I'll have something better, I hope, for you guys tomorrow. But I think we are moving into a phase of martial law. So let's stick together, because we need to now more than ever.